So Rebekah, if you'd like me to start the session.
Yeah.
You think it's the right time to start? Okay, so I would like to say good afternoon to everyone. And I'm very pleased to welcome all our participants and our two guests. The writer is Rebekah Mowbray, who will present her first book called The Shattered Facet. So before we start the session, I would like to send a big thank you. Firstly, to Lindsay, who is librarian at the Rural Library, and she make this happen with me. We work together to make this event happen. In second position with the digital team of the Wollongong libraries. Thank you for them working behind the scene to organize the event promotion. So now I would like to briefly introduce Roma, who is an award-winning journalist, and she will interview Rebekah. I forgot to mention, Roma is also the founder of a website called media publication called astrology.com. So this session will have the interview, Roma will interview Rebekah in the first part. And in the second part, we will have some question and answers. So all the attendees are mute, and you will have the option to send your question in the chat. So now I would like to invite Roma and Rebekah to join us. And I pass over to you now. It's the time for the interview.
Thank you so much. That was really
welcome.
Beautiful. Am I getting some feedback? No? Okay, that sounds
great.
The
sound is good.
Perfect. Thank you. I was simply just going to say, Lindsay, who is our host of this meeting session, is going to kindly mute everybody on the chat right now, apart from Rebekah and myself. Of course, no, you have no obligation to have your camera on. You're welcome to turn off your camera. And even when you ask the questions, you can have your camera on, or you can simply just put your questions in the chat. However, without any further ado, I just want to take a moment for each of us to stop. And just take a deep breath and recognize the day that has been. I don't know about you, but for many of us, including myself, today has been really nonstop. And I just wanted us all to take a moment to appreciate life and the notion that no matter what we're going through, tomorrow doesn't have to look like today, and that our past doesn't have to dictate our future. And it's my deepest honor to introduce Rebekah Mowbray, who is the author of The Shattered Facade, because at its crux, that is exactly what this book is about. And you may have seen Rebekah shared on her social media earlier today that for her, she really hopes that this author talk is nothing further than a beacon of hope, offering people who may think that either their future is going to be dampened by what lies behind them, and offering people encouragement to know that you can dream again, you can dream again, no matter what your past has looked like. So, Beck, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
It is such a privilege to have you today. And I just wanted to first of all commend you on the publication of this book. Like many of us who are on this call right now, you know, we've read your book, and if you're still waiting on your copy to come from Amazon or Barnes & Nobles, don't worry, it's very much worth the wait. But it's no secret that it's incredibly vulnerable. You have taken time to pen some very, very hard moments in your life. And I was wondering if you would do us the honor of simply reading the back of your book so that we could have some context for this conversation.
It's time to go into the tornado of chaos and step into clarity. My life has been a constant litany of storms. Abused as a child and riddled by addictions, I hid behind a composed veneer. Bound by shame, I ran. From backpacking through South America to road tripping solo across Australia, I avoided pain at all costs. It did nothing. There was no relief in running. There was no relief in hiding. There was only release in facing my pain head on. The Shattered Facade is not only my tale of truth, but it is my fight from victim to victor. This is my tale of unashamedly shattering my facade.
Oof. Tell me, what does it feel like for you to read that back now, having the printed copy in your hands?
Confronting and liberating.
In what way?
That these aren't just words on a page, but this is my life. But also that doesn't mean it's my future, what has been. So my story may have been scribed, but through each journey and through each obstacle that I've faced, I believe in God, and he has given me insight and hope in the midst of some trying circumstances. And so when I see this book, I see a token of hope.
That's really beautiful. I think for me, the one thing that I really wanted to unpack with you as we commence this conversation is one statement that you say here. It says, "There was no relief in running. From backpacking through South America, bound by shame, I ran. Road tripping across Australia, I tried to avoid pain at all costs, but there was no relief in hiding. There was only release in facing my pain head on." Tell me a little bit about that.
Oof.
These are why we have these conversations.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I know, right? Oh man, I usually like to dig my head and put it in the sand, but that will not change anything. So I came to a realization that I would never progress in life and change my circumstance if I didn't change my mind and I didn't come to terms with what has been and allow forgiveness to come. Not just for others, but for myself. I needed to come to a point to forgive myself, to release myself from the pain so that then I could start to journey free. But facing the pain was extraordinary. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But I know that it was so necessary.
So what did that practically look like? Because in a moment, I'm going to invite you to read from one of the pages of your book, page 51. Actually, let's do that right now. I think that might be lovely. Page 51 in your book. And if you're here and you've got Rebekah's book alongside you, please feel welcome to follow along. But the chapter is called The Tornado of Chaos. And I was wondering if you could do us the honor of actually reading this page.
I wish I could say that when I stepped back onto Australian soil, everything was rosy and wonderful. Newsflash, it wasn't. It was hard, it was painful, it was horrid. So much hadn't changed while so much in me had. Being treated as though I was the same 19-year-old when I left, being chafed by the old and the new, I no longer knew where I fit. Old patterns taunted and new desires hummed. Turning down a degree in nutrition and dietetics, I held on to the last revelation in Chile. I had to go for my dreams, not just follow an alternative route. For 6 months, I worked hard. I sought out the best teachers, I saved every penny and invested it into music lessons, dance lessons, and acting coaches. It was time to pursue my craft. Days were long, nights were longer. I worked by day and in the nursing home, then travelled out an hour and a half into the city one way for lessons, or 2.5 to the mountains by night. I saw wisdom from the best and life was constant.
Wow. Sorry, I'm speechless because there's so many things that we could even unpack there. But the one that I felt prompt to really explore a little bit briefly with you was the fact that you say, old patterns taunted, new desires hummed. You say, so much hadn't changed while so much in me had. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about that. What does it feel when you're put back in a place and you realize everyone around you is treating you the same, but yet so much has shifted inside of you as a result of your personal development, your self-growth? How did you embrace and how did you choose to work in that situation? And do you have any advice for others who may be going through a similar recalibration in their world?
I felt like an alien to start off with, because I didn't know how to be the new woman that I was. There's a verse in the Bible that says you need to have new wineskins. You have to get rid of the old wineskin that have new, because the new wine will actually break and it will ruin the wineskin. There was new wine within me. So going back into that old environment, that it was, I had to face and fight the old Rebekah. And circumstances would come, whether I be at home, whether I be at work, whether I be with other people that I used to associate with. All the reference points were when I was, before I left for South America. So there was an 8-month gap in between, but I'd done a lot of personal development, backpacking. So that was their only reference points of who I was. In that season of, like, you can read in my book, I live with the Amish, or I live with the Mennonites, and I got challenged and chafed in so many ways. But
I think a lot of people can share such an experience.
Yeah, I had to put myself in a position to embrace the circumstances that came, but to change. When I came home and people didn't see that change, I nearly felt whiplash, because I nearly wanted to shock everyone. I was like, everyone, I've changed. I'm not the same Rebekah anymore. But when that wasn't received, there was another battle I had to face, because there was a desperation and despair that would plague. I was like, obviously I haven't changed. Good job, Beck. You thought you'd gone and progressed so far. Newsflash, you hadn't. So internally, there's another battle that you face. But you then need to break through that barrier to say, actually, no, I have changed. And actually, I'm going to start responding to these circumstances differently, because I can only change me. I cannot change anyone else's perspective of me. I cannot change any other circumstance that I walk into, but I can change my response to it. So going back into the old environments where triggers or different things would happen, by changing the way I responded to that, eventually other perspectives shifted, that actually Beck's grown up a bit, she's matured a bit, she has changed, she has transformed in some degree. So advice to anyone who's finding themselves going into a situation that they feel like they've changed, and they have, and others aren't receiving it, is keep going, keep focused. Don't allow the response that you get from the world or anyone else to dampen the progression that you've had, the personal development that you've had, but let that be fuel to say, all right, you might not see this, but I know that I'm a different person, and I'm going to keep on going down this road until you know it too.
Beck, I really firmly feel that. Spoke to someone on this call. I know it resonated with me deeply. In this season of lockdown, for example, in New South Wales, there's so much that we can't control. But what I love about what you've shared is that it's applicable in any stage of life, recognizing that at the end of the day, what I can control is myself. Whether or not it's received by other people isn't part of the equation. If I want to see change, I'm going to focus on me. And I love your emphasis on keep going. I was wondering if you could read page 49.
Order in the disorder. Order in the disorder. It's time to step into the eye of the storm. It's time to go into the tornado of chaos and step into clarity. It's time to take courage and ride the storm, because only then will you find the answer. Only then will you glean the key. Only then will you obtain victory.
Tell me a little bit about what that poem means.
Okay. Okay. I have a living God. He says to put on shoes of peace. There may be a storm raging. That can be any circumstance. But he says, in the midst of the storm, I have called you to be in a position of peace. I've called you to live not of this world, meaning the obstacles, the battles that come, that you're defeated or you're so challenged by them, but actually I've called you to rise above the storm. I've told you to come from a different vantage point, and I've told you to rest in a place and an assurance that I have you, that I love you, that I'm fighting for you, and I'm with you. From that vantage point, you can now look at your battle. You can now look at the storm. You can now look at that situation knowing that you are not alone. So in your heart and in your soul, there is an element of rest. Even though there is a tornado that's happening around you and the world is crashing, quite literally, there is an assurance that God, you say you will never leave me and you will never forsake me, so I'm going to hold you to your promise.
That's beautiful, Beck. I think what I really took away from that, and you've mentioned it in the poem as well, is that, again, that proactive decision to step into the eye of the storm, to not run away, but recognizing in that moment of immense disorder, as you say, is where, again, you wrote it, only there will you obtain the keys to victory. And that's what your book is really about. You know, I think, well, look, you wrote it on the back. It says, this is my fight from victim to victor. And it's very clear, despite many things that were against you, so to speak, you know, you're very honest about the fact that you did experience sexual abuse quite early on in your life. And that was no doubt difficult to wrangle as you continued growing up. But even to have the courage to say, this is my story of transitioning from victim to victor, I was wondering if you would elaborate a little bit more about that, because clearly that wouldn't have just come instantaneously. What is some advice that you can offer to people who may be feeling like they have slipped a little bit into a victim mentality and then they're not rising above the situation to fight it or to even combat it from a victor's mindset, as you so beautifully articulated?
I guess with life, we look at it and we experience it through certain lenses, through our upbringing, through our belief system, through our values, through circumstances that happen. If we allow our circumstances and be that positive or negative to be the lens that we see everything, there is so much pain in this world. And if we allow pain to be a gauge of how we live, you're going to stay in that victim mentality. And I did that for many years. And my life is grounded in faith, so I'm going to go straight back to my faith. God says you have to renew your mind. You have to be transformed by your thinking. He says you are more than a conqueror. And I would throw this verse back at God. I was like, God, you say that I'm more than a conqueror, but my life does not reflect that. And he would say, Rebekah, how would a conqueror look at this circumstance? How would someone victorious in this area attack that challenge? When I started to see his faithfulness in the small areas in my life, I was then able to use that as leverage to when other obstacles and other challenges came. I was like, you are faithful there, you will be faithful here. So I can stand that you're a faithful God. I've seen in my past, I've been able to battle and come through in this area. Now I need to stand firm and know that I can tackle this too. I'm not going to look at this as, oh, this is another challenge, woe is me. Sometimes, yes, I do. I have wallow days where there's woe is me, woe is Beck. And then I was like, Rebekah Ann, no, it's time to rise above from that vantage point. So I'll give myself 10 minutes. You can go cry, you can go wallow, but now it's time to step out of that place, because you can live there. And I did live there for quite a time. So advice to someone that's trying to transition from victim to victor: don't acknowledge the pain that you're going through. Acknowledge the circumstance, but don't see that as the end result. Don't see that as you have to fight from that position. Rather, know that there is a power of love that supersedes everything that is so for you. And as you look at that obstacle, know there's a backing of love behind you. So when you step into it, there is this power that you're no longer powerless. You have that power. That power is within you. And let that fuel your thoughts. Every thought you have towards this obstacle. I'm not defenseless. I actually have this defense. I'm not hopeless. I actually have a hope. So I would say find an anchor point to hope. For me, it's God. For you, it can be a myriad of other things, but find an anchor to hope and love. And within that anchor point, know that the obstacle and the circumstance is not going to define, it does not define you. But it is there, and it's how you respond to it. And as you respond in an empowering way, your character develops so significantly, and you literally are transformed by these challenges that come. Rather than being defeated, you're empowered.
Beck, that's phenomenal. I was just looking through your book because a lot of what you've shared, it's littered throughout these pages, but yet I know you have been very intentional about covering some relatively dark seasons in your life, again, with an intentional lightness. Correct me if I'm wrong, your overarching, not even intention, but your overarching desire is for people to be left hopeful and encouraged, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And what I really love, and I'm going to get you to read it in a moment, is in theory, this is all really fantastic. But one of the reasons why I think your book has such gravitas and why when you're speaking, there is such power is because, you know, you're very honest about the fact that you shared a year in a psych ward in a hospital and what that felt like. You're very honest about the cancellation of your wedding. You're very honest about feeling immensely rejected from so many different people in your world. I think everyone on this call right now has experienced some level of rejection. So as we end this short portion of dialogue between you and I, and we transition into questions, I thought we would just simply discuss two things that made me smile. There are many moments in your book which which make me personally smile, and I think there's a real intelligence from the way in which you've injected some humor. And the first one, which I'd love your comment on, is the notion that there are certain positions and certain moments in your book and in your life where you've chose to run away from God. And there was a moment where you had to purchase, or someone, correct me if I'm wrong, but someone invited you to an event and you said, God, if it's only $20, I'll go. Can you tell us about that?
Mm-hmm. So my sister had received a lot of breakthrough with some religious leaders, and they were coming to my town, and she's like, Rebekah, you need to see them. I don't want to see them. And it was a big conference they were having. I was like, God, if it is $20 or less, I will go. If it's not, there is no way I'm going. I'm poor, and yep, not happening. It was $20. And I was like, oh, and it was like a 3-day conference or something. So I was expecting like 60, 100, 200. And when I went, that was a very significant moment of change in my life. I sing, and the first night, it was this worship night, and I've been hurt by so many churches, especially with singing. And when I was there, I just let myself, and my voice just soared, and it just went above the congregation, and there was such glory that fell, and I just wept. And people around me were like, oh, it's like angelic hosts came. This is beautiful. But there was something within me. I was like, this is part of home. When you come to the altar with all that you have and you just give it to God, there is such reconciliation in your soul and in your spirit. And from that point on, I moved to Dalesford for 2 years, and I ended up worshipping the House of Prayer and being a part of that community, and I learnt so much. One of the things that God started teaching me was, okay, what sound do you have in the spirit? Hear the sound. Or what do you feel in the spirit? Translate that to sound, so that then you'll transform the atmosphere. So you're able to bring people into that place in the spirit through the sound that you're producing on the piano or singing, whatever it is. From that place, I then learned how to compose music later on. So there's this stepping stones, like God knew at that point I was so broken and so in need of community that it took my sister to say, go to this conference that I did not want to go to. Having that encounter that one night changed my journey significantly. So
I think it's brilliant that you had that monetary figure. You know, some might say it was almost arrogant or outrageous to give God a figure to say, if it's any more than this, I'm not going to go. But I think it's really fantastic. There's another funny moment in your book where, and I'd love your insight on this, you are backpacking around South America and you borrowed your mother's boots. Is that correct? There was the one size too big. Tell us what the ramifications of that was.
So I was hiking Torres del Paine, which is mountainous terrains in southern Patagonia. It's like a 5-day hike. And it's 160 kilometer winds, and the mountains are ridiculous mountains and jagged edges, rocks, scaling some of it. Mum's shoes were size too big, but I was too cheap. So I'm not buying new shoes. I'll just use mum's and wear extra socks. Big mistake, because the first day I had substantial blisters. The second day, they were next level. The third day, I couldn't quite take my socks off because my whole sole of my foot was peeling off. But the thing is, we're so far out in the wilderness, there's no escape route. And we're in the middle of, you know, Chile. And yeah, you can't just call someone and say, hey, get me out of here, I'm hurt. No, you have to get to the end. So I learnt many lessons. One was that I can withstand so much pain when you have to. The next is I won't be so cheap next time, and I'll actually get shoes that fit me. But it was really challenging. I remember one night we got attacked by rats because we accidentally set up camp in a rat's nest. Not very smart. And the thing was, the girls I was with, they were totally mortified at these rats that we can see like trying to jump into our tent and steal all our stuff and eat it through everything. And I'm wallowing because I'm not a very great sleeper, and I'd finally gotten to sleep. And so their squeals had woken me up, and they're worried about these rats, but Kate was using her shoes to combat the rats, and I couldn't take mine off my feet because they were so blistered. And so I'm wallowing because I have sore feet. I'm wallowing because I'm tired and I just got to sleep, and they snore like nothing else. And so it was quite the experience. I eventually got to sleep. They were fine. We ended up throwing out food to the rats, and then they were appeased. And yeah, I've learned a lot.
That's phenomenal, Beck. There was other sections I wanted to go through, but I think what you have said today has really been so inspiring and impactful. I don't want to take away from that. And if anything, this conversation has offered such a precursor that had I not even read your story, I now want to know more. And I think we should leave that as the overarching theme. Not only inspiration, pivoting your mindset, renewing your mind, having courage to step into the storm, having courage to face what is so that you can pave a new reality, I think is one of the things I really took away from your journey. And to see you share what you have with a smile on your face and a radiance is personally very inspiring. And it's at the core of the human spirit. So I just want to say on behalf of everyone here right now, and the people who have read your book and the people who, you know, have sent you plenty of testimonials that I've been fortunate enough to see, I wanted to say thank you for having the courage to share it, because it is not easy. It is not easy, but in doing so, you have really liberated a lot of people who may have dealt or been going through so many different things similarly. So thank you for that. And I actually am going to pivot over to the questions. We've had a few audience members send in some questions, and please know if you're listening right now and you have a few questions, it's not too late, just send it through. We don't want to take up too much of your time. We want to honor the time of everyone who's here right now, but I do think this is also very important to unpack. So very quickly, Beck, what's next for you now that the book has been published? The Shattered Facade.
What's next? Well, I've just finished writing another book, actually, which will potentially turn into a film, which is exciting. So that is one thing. I still perform and I still act, so that's good. I'm actually working with Roma as well, with your company Astrology, which is very exciting as well. I am literally going with the wind. The opportunities that come, I will embrace them and see what happens. So
can I just ask very quickly, Beck, and this pivots into the second question. Someone has asked, can you take us through your writing process? And off the back of that question, I was wondering if you could almost touch on the fact that, was it a release for you to pen some of these stories on paper, or was it more painful?
So The Shadow Facade was a special book. God told me to write it. I literally wrote it in a day, from 5:30 in the morning to 10:30 at night. That process was literally a download that came. I didn't stop writing the whole time. 2 years beforehand, God had told me to write a book from victim to victor. I tried doing like 5 mini sermonettes, and I felt too much of a hypocrite, so I canned the idea. 12th of December last year, God said, you need to finish this now. And I said, I don't know how. And he said, you need to start from the beginning, and people need to know your story so they'll understand the weight in the revelations that you've had. So with relation to the Shattered Facade, my process was literally going from memory to memory, and it just flowed. I'm a poet, and my process of writing poetry, I just see something, and then it's like my thoughts become the words. I hear music in words and in language. And so at times I will see the breeze, and I'll see the wind blowing, creating the breeze, and it brings such an ease, and it, you know, rhymes just come, and I hear music.
If I may quickly interject what you were just saying there, in your foreword with the about the author, it actually says, Rebekah is known for crafting emotive poems in less time than it would take to butter toast. And I think a lot of people, I'm seeing some laughs right now from audience attendees. I think that has proven itself to be true. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Thank you for sharing what you did, Beck. There's quite a few questions here as well, so I'm just going to pick and choose. Again, I want to honor everyone's time, but thank you again for your vulnerability and your honesty. I can't wait to watch the replay of this for my own learnings. One of the questions here says, oh, it's a big one. Love it. There were a lot of events within your book that shaped you, broke you, and undoubtedly caused you to lose faith in God. How did you restore your faith and trust in God during these moments when his timing wasn't always aligned with yours? How beautifully written.
So when I was a little kid, I used to always try and prove God didn't exist. And so I'd like, to prove you don't exist, you have to do X, Y, and Z. The first one was getting a massage chair that my grandma had, because we weren't allowed to touch it because it was, in those days, very expensive. And anyhow, went to uni and I got the massage chair to the T of what I asked God for. Or one was getting my name on the top of the roll call list, because Mowbray's M, it's always at the bottom, and I wanted to be at the top. Then I eventually got to the top of the roll call list because they changed my classes. Or yeah, so it's a lot of different things that I would always challenge God and say, prove you exist to me. It might sound ridiculous, but that's just my story with God. When I was in South America, I very much had been running away from God as well. So I'd been in churches and I've been hurt by many churches, and I needed peace. So I would go down any area that I could potentially find peace, be that acupuncture, be that Reiki, be that neurolinguistic channeling, be that Chinese therapies, be that Buddhism. I would try anything and everything to have hope and peace, and I didn't find it. I got into more cans of worms. When I was in South America, when I was a child, I wanted to be Amish, and I ended up living with the Amish in the Amazon. And it's like God knew who to put in my path to set me back on the right path. So for me, it started with spending time and living with the Amish and realizing that, no, I don't want to be Amish. I want my electric beater when I'm making a lemon meringue pie. Then I learned about the Mennonites, and I was like, I could be Mennonite. It's like, Rebekah, you're never going to meet a Mennonite. A month of traveling alone, and I was very, very depressed and wanting to end it all. It's like, Rebekah, snap out of this. I looked to a girl next to me. What's your name? What you doing here? I'm Beck. I'm Jean. I'm a Mennonite missionary. It's like, what? So that springboarded me onto a whole new journey of faith. And I ended up living with the Mennonites for 2 months on different Chilean islands. And I saw God work and miracles happen. And yeah, from that point on, my faith was very much reignited. When I was in Argentina, when I first met the Mennonites, I prayed, God, if you're real, I want to be a part of their team. I want to be a part of their family, but I need to leave and I'm never going to see them again. It's your fault. Don't like you anymore. I have some interesting conversations with God. A month later, there was riots in southern Patagonia, so I had to get a boat instead of a bus, and it poured in the town that they were doing all their mission work. And I spent one night, and Eduardo, the pastor, was like, Rebekah, I must speak with you. And I was like, no. But I said yes, of course. Internally, I was not going to let him. The next day, Rebekah, I must speak with you. The reason why I was not wanting to talk to him was because when we were in Peru, I was attacked by a gang of Peruvians, so I didn't particularly like men at that point in time. Anyhow, I eventually allowed him to speak to me, and translated from Spanish was the prayer I had in Argentina. Rebekah, God told me to tell you, this is your family, this is your home, on one condition, you become part of the team. I was robbed, and I became part of the team. So my faith was reignited by the faithfulness of God meeting me where I was at, putting me in a circumstance that he knew would minister to my core. I believe he does that for individuals. If you call out to him, he will answer. He says, here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If you will hear my voice, if you will open the door, I will come in.
Wow. Beck, someone in the audience has asked, what does success mean to you? And what is your definition of success?
Oh, that's a good one. Success means to me going beyond what I thought myself capable of and surprising myself.
In what way?
Down the road from where we live is a hill, and it's horrible. I run up it once and I'm dead. And I've managed to run up it 57 times because I'm like, Rebekah Ann, you can do so much more than you think yourself capable of. And it's the retraining of my mind, and it's the retraining of what I believe myself capable of. And the more I stretch myself, I see that as success. I see success as pushing beyond your limits and keeping on going, and seeing how far you can go and not giving up, and allowing that to surprise and ignite you, and letting that be your fire and your passion.
My gosh, Beck, I am truly inspired by what you've shared, and I'm smiling not only externally but internally, because there's so much more context that you have offered in the book that adds even more gravitas to what you're sharing. And the fact that you can even talk the way you are, it really suggests the success of what you've been through and how you've handled it. The byproduct is literally in front of us right now. And I just encourage anyone, if you haven't already, Rebekah's book is available on almost any major retailer, online and otherwise, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Booktopia. I just wanted to quickly ask Beck, and it's mirrored in a question by an audience member. Now, what are your passions? And if any, have your passions remained similar to what they've been in the book?
My passions have been shifting. So of course, writing, performing, storytelling. But Roma, since our friendship, from wanting to be Amish, now I like technology. I was like, what has happened to me? So that's been exciting. Other passions, yeah, I've actually discovered a real joy for writing. I never saw myself as a writer or an author. I was the singer, or I was the actress, or I played the piano. But there's been a new joy in, a different form of storytelling. So,
Rebekah, that is absolutely beautiful. As we wrap up today, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to anyone who may be listening right now and feels like their best is behind them, or that the future is too challenging to bear. What would you say to that person, knowing full well that you have lived in that state of mind before?
I can remember when I was homeless and my wedding was cancelled, and I was driving aimlessly and it was lashing with rain. It was a storm. There were many trees around. I was like, this would be a very easy answer. I started singing over the storm and I wept, and the pain that I felt was physical. There was a voice that said, you need to sing through this. You need to speak hope over yourself. Speak life over yourself. I would hike up a mountain and I'm like, Lord, show me the significant in the insignificant. When we start to accumulate the insignificant joys and insignificant light or love or anything, be it a petal, be it a flower, be it the sun, that starts to change the vantage point. That empowers you to continue on. That gives you a reason to breathe. Breath is a gift. When you don't feel that you can continue, know that you can. Know within you is a power and a strength that supersedes any obstacle that is in your path. You just need to keep going. Do not give in.
Beck, thank you. Thank you for reminding us to keep going, even when life is hard. Thank you for reminding us to dream, even if we think we're too old, we're too young, and we don't have enough experience. Thank you for reminding us that even if the people around us can't see the change that we've made in ourselves, it's still significant and it's worth championing and going ahead. So on behalf of everyone here today, thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and investing in everything that this has been. Thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it over to Laurie and the team at Wollongong City Libraries. Thank you for facilitating this forum. And I'm just going to pass it over to you.
Sorry, I just unmute myself. So thank you, Rebekah. That was very powerful, very significant. And thank you for sharing all your journey from victim to victor. I love it. It's really intense, but definitely as your book. And I can see the writer in you. I wish you all the best, because I'm sure you will do it. And as you say, singing, writing, it's all come from your inner emotions, feelings. And it's also a talent and a gift to be able to share it. So thank you for that. And I wish you all the best for the future. I'm sure you will get there. And anytime, if you write another book, more than happy to invite you in a following year or who knows when. But and thank you, Roma, as well. It was a beautiful interview. It was a real pleasure to share this moment with you. And all the best for everyone. I really appreciate your time and your sharing your experiences. And hopefully one day we can do it physically and sharing a few drinks after and enjoying a more or less formal conversation. Thank you to everyone, to all the participants. And as Rebekah said, the library bought the books. It's still on order, but in a few months or shorter, you could borrow the books or buy it now if you can't wait. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Very much.